Does environmental compliance have to cost a fortune? And if you're running a small business, where should you actually spend your money? In this video, we're going to talk about what environmental compliance really costs, where it's worth investing, where you can save money, and how to stay compliant without blowing your budget. Hey there, I'm Tate Hunter from RMA, your environmental experts. We help businesses build practical environmental compliance programs that fit their budgets, so if you ever need a hand figuring out yours, just reach out. All right, let's jump in. The first thing to know is that environmental compliance isn't all or nothing. A lot of small business owners assume that they're either fully compliant or they're not, and in reality, compliance is made up of a lot of individual components, and not every business needs every permit or every plan or report. So if you're wondering, how much does environmental compliance cost for my small business? The answer is, it depends on what your facility actually does and what you therefore need. At the very low end, if you only need a couple relatively simple environmental documents, you might even be able to prepare some of them yourself. And in that case, your cost could be very little or even nothing based on your own time. If you hire a consultant instead, or the documents are more involved, you might spend anywhere from a few $1,000s to up to $10,000 to get everything in place. For a lot of small businesses, that's roughly where they fall. They need a handful of plans, maybe a permit or two, and occasional help from an environmental consultant. On the other hand, if your business has more involved needs like ongoing permit support, annual reporting, regular inspections, employee training, hazardous waste assistance, or permit modifications as your operations change, it's not unusual to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $20,000 per year if you're relying on an outside expert. And even some small businesses can end up above that. If you have a more environmentally complex operation with multiple permits and significant emissions and hazardous waste and several facilities, it is entirely possible to spend $50,000 a year or more on environmental compliance. It's certainly not the norm for a small business, but it definitely does happen. One thing that we don't see talked about enough and we think is really important is that you need to understand that your first year is almost always going to be your most expensive. And that's because you're getting everything into place. You might need permits, plans, inspections, training, or compliance assessments all done at once. And once you've reached compliance, your ongoing costs are usually much lower, because at that point you're mostly just maintaining what you've already built through things like annual reports and recurring training, and permit renewals and inspections, and updating documents whenever your operations change. Now, as a small business, you might think that all of this sounds way out of your budget, and so the next question is where your budget has the biggest impact. Some of the best investments are also some of the least expensive. Employee training helps prevent mistakes before they happen. An environmental audit can identify all of the areas that are deficient in one swoop rather than paying to deal with things every single time they come up. Periodic environmental reviews beyond that can identify lingering problems while they're still easy to fix. Good routine inspections catch issues before regulators do. Preventative maintenance can prevent spills, releases, and equipment failures. And having a simple, organized record-keeping system can save hours during an inspection and thousands of dollars in penalties if you can't find those documents. Now, those may not be exciting, but they're often what keep the small problems from becoming much bigger, more expensive ones. And that's really the next point, which is what gets really expensive really fast. Environmental penalties can easily reach thousands or even tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Cleanup costs for an environmental incident can quickly exceed the cost of years of compliance. Operating without your required permits can lead to enforcement actions like fines or even needing to close your business until you've obtained them. Even something as simple as missing a reporting deadline can cost far more than preparing the report would have just cost you in the first place. In other words, compliance is almost always cheaper than fixing a compliance problem after the fact. That does not mean that you have to do everything at once, though. One of the biggest ways that small businesses save money is by taking a phased approach. Maybe you tackle the highest risk compliance items first, and then you build from there. If you need multiple environmental services, it can often be more cost effective to combine them into one project instead of hiring separate consultants every time something comes up. Remote consulting can also be a great option when an on-site visit isn't necessary, and over time, building simple internal procedures can reduce how much you actually rely on an outside consultant each year. Now, your budget and your needs usually also change as your business grows year after year. A startup usually just needs to identify which environmental requirements are going to apply to them once they're up and running before investing in anything else. An established, stable business has slightly more intensive needs, like keeping permits and training and documentation up to date. In periods of growth, you're going to want to review whether your expansion or your new equipment or additional materials or operations trigger new requirements. And if you're managing multiple facilities, consistency becomes as important as compliance, and having standardized procedures across locations can save you a lot of time and money. So at the end of the day, the goal should not be to spend as little as possible. It should be to spend your environmental budget where it actually reduces the most risk. Now, if you'd rather not figure out all of this stuff yourself, that is exactly where we come in. We here at RMA help businesses identify exactly which environmental requirements apply. We help you prepare any required documentation, plans, permit applications, that kind of thing that you need. And then we help you build compliance programs that fit your operation and your budget as it grows. Our goal is never to sell you services that you don't need. It is to help you spend your compliance dollars where they will have the biggest impact. Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you run a small business, check out the link in the description to our dedicated small business page at rmagreen.com. We pulled together all of our articles, videos, guides, tools, calculators, and information on our services for small businesses all in one place. If you want to dive deeper into any of our specific services, we've got a dedicated learning center for each one, plus pricing pages and calculators so you can see exactly what it would cost to have RMA handle it. And if you want to talk to an environmental expert about your business, you can reach out at rmagreen.com too. Thank you again for watching, and we will catch you in the next one.